I watched my daughter-in-law hurl a leather suitcase into the lake and drive away without a single glance back. The water swallowed it whole, but not before I heard it, a faint, desperate cry coming from inside. My name is Margaret Hollis, 63 years old, and I thought I'd buried every tragedy life could throw at me, until that suitcase. Because when I pulled it from the muddy water and unzipped it, what I found inside didn't just steal my breath. It rewrote everything I thought I knew about my family, my dead son, and the woman I once called daughter. I had seen many strange things in my 63 years of life, but nothing could ever prepare me for the sight of my daughter-in-law hurling a brown leather suitcase into the lake and driving away as if she'd buried a ghost. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. The afternoon sun shimmered on the ripples, and the sound of the car's engine faded into the trees. Then, silence. The kind that presses against your chest and tells you something terrible has just happened. At first, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe Rachel had thrown away old clothes or something meaningless. But then I heard it, so faint I almost mistook it for the cry of a bird. A weak, muffled sound coming from the middle of the lake. My stomach turned cold. That sound wasn't a bird, it was a cry. A human cry. Without thinking, I ran. My feet hit the porch steps, the gravel, the damp grass, until I reached the muddy bank. The air smelled like wet earth and pine sap. The lake stretched out before me, still, deceptive, innocent. But I could see it, the suitcase, bobbing on the surface, half sinking, half floating, as if struggling to decide between life and death. "Dear Lord," I whispered, the words slipping out on instinct. I waded in, the cold biting into my legs. The mud clung to my feet, sucking me downward. My knees screamed with pain, but I didn't stop. My hands reached for the handle, slick and heavy. The suitcase resisted, pulling me forward with its weight, as if it didn't want to be saved. When I finally dragged it onto the bank, I collapsed beside it, chest heaving. The old leather was soaked, darkened, and dripping. My hands trembled as I touched the zipper. It was jammed, rusted, refusing to move. Then I heard it again, that tiny, choking sound. "Please, God," I begged, my voice shaking, "don't let it be what I think it is." The zipper gave way all at once, splitting open with a sharp metallic gasp. The smell of lake water and something far worse filled the air. Inside, wrapped in a soaked pale blue blanket, was a newborn baby, motionless, colorless, lips the shade of twilight. For a heartbeat, I thought I was looking at death itself. But then, as I leaned closer, I felt it, a flutter, a faint breath against my cheek. A pulse, fragile but there. He was alive. A sob tore out of me. I cradled him in my arms, the way I once held my own son Daniel, decades ago. The tiny body was cold, so cold that it burned my skin. His little fingers curled reflexively against my palm. I pressed him close, my tears mixing with the lake water dripping from his face. I didn't have time to think about what this meant. Why Rachel had thrown this child into the lake, or who he belonged to. All I knew was that if I didn't act now, he'd die right there in my arms. I ran, barefoot, drenched, desperate, across the yard toward the house. Every step felt like thunder in my bones. My breath came in broken gasps. I crashed through the back door, water streaming from my clothes onto the wooden floor. The kitchen phone hung on the wall, old but reliable. My hands were shaking too badly to dial, but somehow I managed. 911? A calm voice answered. There's a baby," I stammered. "I found a baby in the lake. He's not breathing, he's freezing. Please send help." "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. What's your address?" I gave it. My voice was barely more than a whisper. The operator instructed me to lay the baby flat, to check his breathing. I swept everything off the kitchen table, plates shattered on the floor, paper scattered like confetti, and placed him there. His chest barely moved. "Yes," I choked. "He's breathing, but it's shallow." "Good. Dry him gently and wrap him in something warm. The ambulance is on its way." I grabbed the first towels I could find and wrapped the baby, this tiny, fragile stranger, in them. His lips quivered. I pressed my cheek to his forehead, whispering words I didn't even recognize as my own. "Hold on, little one. You're safe now. Grandma's here. You're safe." It took 7 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. Longest 7 minutes of my life. I sat on the floor with him in my lap, rocking back and forth, humming the same lullaby I used to sing to Daniel when storms scared him as a child. The sound of sirens finally cut through the air, and I cried out with relief. Two paramedics burst through the door. A young woman with dark hair tied back and a tall man with gray at his temples. The woman went straight to the baby, her movements quick but gentle. "Severe hypothermia," she said, her tone clipped, focused. "We need to move." I climbed into the ambulance with them. The baby, so impossibly small, was surrounded by blinking lights, oxygen masks, machines that beeped like anxious hearts. I held my breath the whole ride, afraid that if I exhaled, his would stop. "How did you find him?" the paramedic asked. "In a suitcase," I said. "Thrown into the lake." Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp and uncertain. "Did you see who threw it?" I hesitated, the truth burning on my tongue. "My daughter-in-law, Rachel Pierce, the woman who'd cried at my son's funeral, who'd called me mom, who'd sat at my table and eaten my food, had just tried to drown a baby, and not just any baby. Something deep inside me already knew it, even before the DNA tests, even before the detectives. That child was Daniel's, my son's blood, my grandson." Scene 2. Shadows beneath the surface. The night swallowed the sirens long before my heartbeat slowed. When the ambulance stopped in front of Atlanta Medical Center, the world became a blur of white coats, flashing lights, and commands barked in urgency. The baby, the tiny life I dragged out of the lake, disappeared behind double doors, surrounded by a swarm of doctors and nurses. And then, silence again. I stood in the hallway, drenched and shivering, watching my reflection tremble in the polished glass. I didn't even know his name. A nurse approached, mid-40s, kind eyes behind tired glasses. Her badge read Caroline Brooks, RN. She handed me a blanket. "Ma'am, you need to sit. You're in shock." "I'm fine," I lied. "The baby? They're doing everything they can, but you have to breathe, all right? Sit here, keep warm." Her voice was calm, but her eyes said otherwise. She'd seen things like this before, maybe too many. I sat in a plastic chair beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. The air smelled like antiseptic and fear. A police officer showed up minutes later, a young man with a clipboard and a badge that seemed too new to carry weight. He asked for my ID, my address, what I'd seen. I told him everything: the silver sedan, the splash, the suitcase. He nodded, jotting notes without looking up. "We'll have a detective come talk to you shortly, Mrs. Hollis." It took an hour, maybe more. When the detective arrived, she wasn't what I expected. Detective Laura Bennett looked mid-40s, sharp as a scalpel, her hair tied in a no-nonsense bun. Her presence filled the small waiting room. Not loud, not intimidating, just steady, like someone who'd seen enough darkness to stop flinching. "Mrs. Hollis," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Detective Bennett, Fulton County Sheriff's Department. I'd like to ask you a few questions." She sat across from me, opened a small notebook, and clicked her pen. "Tell me exactly what happened." I told her again, from the porch to the splash, to pulling that cursed suitcase out of the lake. I didn't leave a detail out. But when I said the name Rachel Pierce, Laura's pen stopped. "Your daughter-in-law?" "Yes." "You're certain it was her?" "I saw her. I'd recognize that car anywhere. I gave it to my son when he graduated from Georgia Tech." "The same car your daughter-in-law now drives?" "Yes." Laura leaned back. "What's your relationship with her like, Mrs. Hollis?" I hesitated. That question carried a weight I didn't want to touch. "Complicated," I said. "We tolerated each other." She raised an eyebrow. "Tolerated?" "I never trusted her," I admitted. "She was ambitious, always looking for the next bigger, better thing. Daniel was soft. He adored her, thought she hung the moon." Laura scribbled something down. "Do you believe she'd be capable of harming a child?" I didn't, until today. The words came out sharper than I meant them to, slicing through the still air. Before the detective could respond, Nurse Caroline appeared again, her face solemn but not hopeless. "The baby's stable," she said. "We've got him in neonatal intensive care. He's cold, but he's breathing on his own. He's a fighter." My knees nearly gave out from relief. "Can I see him?" I asked. "Not yet. Only family." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died there. What could I say? That I was the stranger who pulled him from the lake? That maybe, just maybe, I wasn't a stranger at all? 2 hours later, Detective Bennett returned with 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of me, untouched. "We've located the car," she said. My heart jumped. "Rachel's?" "Yes, parked outside a supermarket in Marietta at 5:20 this afternoon." "That's impossible," I blurted. "She was at the lake at 5:10, maybe 5:15. Laura handed me a grainy printout from a security camera. Rachel's car, license plate clear as day, timestamped 5:20 p.m. Traffic cameras confirmed she couldn't have been in both places at once. I stared at the image, my mind spinning. I knew what I'd seen. The way she moved, frantic, guilty, desperate, the dust cloud when she sped away, the sound of her tires screaming against gravel. I wasn't crazy. Mrs. Hollis, Laura said softly, grief can play tricks on the mind, especially when you've suffered recent trauma. Grief. The word stung like acid. Everyone used it as if it explained everything. The loneliness, the paranoia, the hollow ache that followed me since Daniel's death 8 months ago. I clenched my jaw. I'm not mistaken, it was her. Laura didn't argue, but the silence between us was louder than disbelief. The next morning, I was still there when the doctor came. He was young, early 30s, with tired eyes and a voice that carried too much bad news. The baby's condition is improving, he said. We've treated the hypothermia. He aspirated some water, but his oxygen levels are stabilizing. What about his family? I asked. Do you know who he is? Not yet. We've sent samples for DNA comparison. The police are helping us identify potential relatives. DNA? I repeated, my stomach twisting. Yes, if we can't find the mother, we'll need to know if he has other family. We'll know within 48 hours. I nodded, pretending that sentence didn't pierce straight through my ribs. Detective Bennett met me in the hallway later that day. Her tone was all business. Rachel Pierce's house is empty, she said. She's vanished. No sign of forced entry. Her phone's off, bank accounts untouched. So she ran. Looks that way. I folded my arms. What about my son's death? You said you'd re-examine it. She hesitated, then flipped open a folder she'd been carrying. Daniel Hollis died in a single-vehicle accident 8 months ago. Official report lists hydroplaning as cause, but after your statement, I requested a mechanical review of the wreck. And? There are inconsistencies. The brake lines were compromised, not completely cut, but tampered with. Enough to fail under stress. The hallway seemed to tilt beneath me. You're saying someone sabotaged his car? She nodded grimly. Yes, ma'am. It's now a homicide investigation. The words dropped like stones into a still pond. For months I'd told myself Daniel's death was an accident, that life was cruel but random. Now the randomness had a name, a face. Rachel Pierce. The woman who'd sat at my table after the funeral, weeping, holding my hand. The woman who'd looked me in the eye and said, "He was my world, Mom." I gripped the edge of a chair to steady myself. Detective, if she killed my son, why try to kill that baby too? That's what we're going to find out. That evening, I sat alone in the hospital cafeteria, with a cup of untouched coffee growing cold in front of me. The rain outside pressed against the windows like ghosts trying to get in. A nurse's aide passed by, humming softly, holding a bouquet of balloons meant for another child upstairs. I wondered if that baby had parents waiting by his bedside. I wondered what it felt like to have a family still intact. When Caroline came by again, she carried a paper bag. "Dinner," she said. "You need to eat." "I can't. You have to keep your strength. That little one's still fighting. You should too." Her kindness made something inside me crack. I blinked hard to keep from crying. "You know," I whispered, "my son died 8 months ago. His wife, Rachel, she's the one who threw that suitcase." "I know it." Caroline didn't interrupt. She just listened. Sometimes that's all a person needs. "I don't understand why," I continued. "Daniel loved her. He gave her everything. And now?" My voice broke. "And now she's taken everything from me." Caroline reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't know that yet. Maybe this baby will give you something back." She was right. I didn't know who the baby was. But I could feel it. Some thread connecting us. Invisible, but undeniable. 2 days later, Detective Bennett called early in the morning. "We got the DNA results," she said. "Can you come to the station?" I drove through the rain, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The sheriff's office smelled like coffee and old paper, the scent of weary truth. Laura sat across from me in a small interview room. She placed a manila folder on the table. "Mrs. Hollis," she began carefully, "the baby you rescued, he's your grandson." My breath caught. "What? His DNA matches your son's. He's Daniel's biological child." For a moment, the world went soundless. Just the rain against the windows and the faint hum of the overhead light. My son had a child, a living piece of him, and his wife, the woman who should have protected that baby, had tried to kill him. The room spun. I pressed my hand to my chest, gasping for air that suddenly felt too heavy to breathe. Laura's voice softened. I'm sorry. I know this is a lot. A lot, it was everything. It was grief reborn, twisted and sharpened. What happens now? I asked finally. Child Protective Services will place the baby in state custody while we locate next of kin. Given the circumstances, you may be eligible for temporary guardianship. Temporary? It's a process, she said. There'll be background checks, home inspections. I don't care what it takes, I interrupted. He's my blood. I'm not letting strangers raise him. Laura studied me for a long moment before nodding. Then let's start with the paperwork. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with Daniel's old blanket draped across my lap, listening to the storm roll over Lake Juniper. The water outside glistened in the flashes of lightning. 8 months ago, that same lake reflected the headlights of my son's car before it hit the tree. 8 months later, it carried his child back to me. Was it fate? God? Coincidence? I didn't know. I only knew I'd been given a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. I looked at Daniel's photo on the mantel. His smile, soft, boyish, almost looked alive in the flicker of the lamp. I found him, Danny, I whispered. Your boy. He's safe now. I promise you, I'll protect him. The storm outside rumbled, deep and distant, like an answer from somewhere beyond. The rain didn't stop the next day. It threaded the pine trees into gray curtains and turned the hospital parking lot into a sheet of glass. Inside the NICU, machines blinked rhythmically around the baby the nurses called baby boy Hollis. They'd taped a paper heart to the side of his incubator. Someone's small kindness in a place built to hold terror at bay. Can I touch him? I asked Nurse Caroline Brooks, my voice a whisper I barely recognized. Through the port, 1 finger only, she said, gentling me the way you gentle a skittish horse. He needs your voice too. Babies know love by sound first. I slipped my finger in. He latched on, not with strength, but with a stubborn, fluttering determination that made something in me break and reform in the space of a breath. Hey there, I breathed. Your Nana's here. A reflection moved behind the glass. Detective Laura Bennett. She gave me a nod that meant we talk now, and I pulled back, already bracing. In the family room, she spread a folder between us. Maggie, I want to be transparent. This isn't just a child neglect case. It's a homicide inquiry that now touches inheritance law. Speak plain, I said. I'm too old for riddles. She tapped the file. Your son, Daniel, changed his will 2 weeks before he died. He left his estate to his future children outright, held in trust until age 25. Rachel Pierce is not a beneficiary except as guardian if she's deemed fit, which, given tonight, she won't be. My breath caught. He knew. Maybe he suspected, Laura said. He also increased his life insurance the month before. Policy paid out $200,000 4 months after his death, to Rachel. And she moved it. Wire transfers to a boutique bank in the Caymans were working with the feds. Her eyes were flat, tired. Motive doesn't prove murder, but it draws a map. I stared at my hands, veins like the river lines on an old atlas. Find her. We will, she said, but I need you to understand something about custody. Child Protective Services will enter the scene today. They don't move on faith, they move on checklists. As if conjured, Angela Park, a young social worker with storm-sober eyes, arrived with a government-issue smile and a legal pad. Mrs. Hollis, she said, I'm here to discuss emergency placement and kinship options. Before we begin, do you have any health issues that would limit caregiving? I've got knees that complain and a back that won't shut up, I said, but the rest of me is mean enough to live forever. A flicker of humor crossed her face. It vanished quickly. Our priority is the child's safety. To place with kin, even temporarily, we need background checks, a home assessment, financial stability documentation, and a psychological screening. You'll also complete a 30 to 40-hour caregiver training. Until then, the infant remains under state custody. The words landed like thin knives. State custody where? I asked. In foster care with a certified medical home, she said. You'd have supervised visitation twice a week. I swallowed hard. He's my blood. I understand, Angela said softly. Kinship placement is often best, But the law requires proof you're safe and stable. Paper proof. Paper walls, I murmured. We keep building them between family and the child who needs it most. She didn't argue. If you want this, I'll start the process right now. I want it, I said. Every form you've got, every test. Start the fire. I'll walk through. The next hours blurred. Ink signatures, consent boxes, the rattle and hum of hospital printers. They rolled a portable scanner into the family room so Angela could upload Daniel's birth certificate, my driver's license, my battered insurance card, even the deed to the house by Juniper Lake. Laura stood by when I authorized the release of Daniel's financial records to the sheriff's office and CPS, the ink pooling on my name like a bruise. When they finally let me back to the NICU, Caroline was changing the boy's diaper, hands quick and sure. His temperature's holding steady, she said. We'll try feeds by bottle soon. Does he have a name? I asked, feeling foolish as the question left my mouth. Not yet. Hospitals use placeholders until a parent or court says otherwise. Parent. The word was a locked room with a window I could see through but not open. Noah, I said, surprising myself. If anyone asks, Daniel always loved that name. Said it sounded like a boat weathering a storm. Caroline looked at me like she understood more than she said. We'll note it, she said softly. That night, Pastor Samuel Green came to sit with me in the plastic chapel that hospitals set aside for people who need to bargain with heaven. Grace is not the absence of storms, he said, watching the red flicker of the sanctuary light. It's the roof that holds while they rage. Daniel changed his will. He knew she'd hurt that child. My voice made of gravel. He tried to build a roof. She lit a match under it. Pastor Samuel folded his hands. You can't out-argue evil. You outlast it. I stared at him. I don't know if I can. You found that suitcase, he said simply. You ran into water and weight and terror and you pulled life back out. I'd say you already have. With the home visit came faster than I expected. Angela called at dawn. An opening, she said. My partner and I can be at your place by 2. I drove the back roads to the house, the lake a dull mirror under a sullen sky. The path where I'd run barefoot was furrowed with old footprints now set in the dried mud like fossil tracks. Inside, the house smelled like lemon oil and old wood. I put on coffee and hid the tremor in my hands by cleaning what was already clean. I took Daniel's varsity trophies off the shelf in his room and set them in a box, then stood very still, as if I'd stepped into a church and found the pews rearranged while I was gone. His room felt like a memorial that didn't know it had become a nursery. At 2 sharp, Angela arrived with another woman whose clipped bangs and steady eyes said, I like rules and I sleep at night because of them. They walked room to room, kitchen, bathroom, the porch where coffee cups remembered better conversations, the back door where my husband had once measured Daniel's growth in pencil marks I'd never painted over. The inspectors measured windows and peered at smoke detectors. They checked outlets with a little red test light that looked like a toy. Where would the child sleep? Angela asked. Here, I said, opening Daniel's door. I'd set a borrowed bassinet against the wall and taped a paper mobile of stars above it, something I'd cut from an old craft book in the night I couldn't bring myself to sleep. The other woman ran a palm along the sill, checking for drafts. You'll need a certified crib, mattress with no more than 2 fingers width between slats, outlet covers, cabinet locks, safety gates on stairs, and a carbon monoxide detector near the bedroom. I'll get them today, I said, and child-proof latches on your cleaning supplies, she added gently. He won't crawl for months, but the rules don't make exceptions for not yet. I nodded. When they left, their list on my table looked longer than the Bible and twice as fussy. I drove into town, bought a crib I couldn't quite afford, a changing table, a car seat with more straps than a parachute, and a bag of outlet covers that spilled like white coins across the floor when I opened them. By midnight, the crib stood, crooked but real. The mattress made a soft sigh when I pressed it. I set the mobile of paper stars above it and waited for the feeling people promised would come when you built a space for a child. It didn't arrive in trumpets and light. It came small, like a bird settling in winter. This will do. This will hold. The next morning, Dr. Henry Lawson, a geneticist with a voice worn patient by years of explaining hard truths to soft people, met me in a consultation room that smelled faintly of whiteboard markers. "The infant is your grandson, Mrs. Hollis," he said, not unkindly. "We're looking at approximately 25% DNA shared, which is to say he is definitively Daniel's son." "Definitively," I repeated, as if the word itself might knit a new cloth where something had ripped. He nodded. "He was born recently, within days. There are signs of unassisted delivery. We've documented cord ligature with household twine. That suggests secrecy rather than medical oversight." "Rachel," I said. The name tasted like tin. "She hid a pregnancy for 9 months?" "I don't traffic in motives," Dr. Lawson said, closing the file. "Only facts. The rest is law and sorrow." Law and sorrow. Yes, that sounded right. Angela scheduled my psychological screening for the following day. I sat in a room with beige walls while a young clinician with considerate eyebrows asked, "How do you cope with stress? And do you have a support network? And are you seeking to replace your son with his child?" "No," I said, and felt the word flash cold. "I'm seeking to keep a child safe who was thrown into water like garbage." The clinician didn't flinch. She made a note. "What frightens you most about caring for an infant at 63? "That I'll run out of time," I said. "That I'll die before he remembers I loved him." She looked up, and for a second the professional screen slipped. "That's not nothing," she murmured, and I wondered who she went home to. Afterward came the caregiver training, run by a girl no older than the sweaters in my cedar chest. She showed us swaddling techniques with a plastic baby that looked like it had seen more clinics than any child should. We covered feeding cues, safe sleep, car seat buckling that required hands smarter than mine, and shaken baby warnings that made my stomach turn. I took notes like a schoolgirl. I made myself learn. Love is not enough, the program implied. Maybe it's the only thing that is, I thought. But I didn't say it out loud. While I learned how to burp a child again, Detective Laura kept building the other case, the one with blood and money and a woman who could make lies sound like lullabies. "We served a subpoena on Pierce's bank," Laura said over coffee in the hospital cafeteria. "Confirmed a $200,000 life insurance payout. 2 weeks later, transfers to foreign accounts. She got a consultation at Brierton & Klein, a divorce firm that specializes in high-asset separations. Then, radio silence. Did she tell anyone she was pregnant? No OB visits, no pharmacy records for prenatal vitamins, no baby registry under any alias we can find." Laura tapped her pen. "But she did buy a short-term rental cabin with cash 2 weeks ago. Rural, isolated, the owner didn't ask questions. Where? 2 counties over," she said. "We're checking for biological evidence." "Blood," I said. "Or worse," Laura answered, and we didn't talk for a while after that. The home inspection follow-up came 3 days later. The list was shorter this time. Carbon monoxide detectors, installed. Cabinet locks, child-proofed. Extinguisher under the sink and one by the back door. Crib, certified, mattress firm, fitted sheet tight as a drum. I watched the inspectors' faces the way you watch a jury's, searching for kindness with a flashlight. "You're in compliance," the rule sleeper said at last, and I sagged like a rope let down from a high place. Angela lingered. "One more item," she said gently. "Supervised visitation today, 20 minutes. The NICU felt like church again when I walked in with the state still on my heels. Caroline lifted Noah into my arms. He was softer now, warmer, the blue fallen from his lips, his eyes moving in fractured newborn patterns like he was learning how to be in a world that didn't want him at first and then changed its mind. "Hey, sailor," I whispered. "We built you a boat." He made a small sound that wasn't a cry so much as a note. I memorized it, packed it like a talisman, where memory can't be stolen. "Time," Angela said, too soon, voice not unkind. "I know," I said, handing him back like returning a borrowed heartbeat. That evening, alone in Daniel's room with the new crib and the old trophies boxed at my feet, I opened a storage bin I hadn't touched in months. Inside, ticket stubs, a tangle of lanyards and name badges, a pair of cufflinks that had been his father's. At the bottom, a leather notebook I didn't remember giving him. I hesitated, then opened it. The first pages were job notes, bridge sketches, load calculations, the kind of math that made Dan light up. Then the writing shifted. Met someone, Rachel, bright as a coin in sunlight. A few pages later, she looked through my bank app, said she was curious, felt wrong. And then, found a test, positive. She said I ruin her plans. I changed the will today. If I can't make her love the future, I can make sure the future is loved. My hands shook. The last entry was a date I can't bring myself to forget. She said I'll regret making her a mother. I told her I'd take the child, raise him myself if I have to. I'll talk to Mom tomorrow. I think she'll understand. He'd meant to come home. He'd meant to put this in my hands while he was still here to carry half the weight. I closed the journal like you close a coffin, carefully, knowing the body inside will never rise. He'd meant to come home. On the 7th day after the lake, Judge Evelyn Carter convened an emergency hearing in a small courtroom that tried to look official and mostly just looked tired. Angela sat beside me. Laura across the aisle with a stack of files that said we are not guessing. Dr. Lawson in the back, a quiet sentinel of facts. Pastor Samuel behind me, a hand on my shoulder that felt like a pillar you could lean your whole life against. The judge adjusted her glasses. Mrs. Hollis, we have reviewed your background check. Clean, your home assessment passed, psychological screening adequate, caregiver training completed, in progress with supplemental hours scheduled. Your Honor, Angela said, CPS supports temporary kinship placement, pending light of the emergency circumstances and the biological relationship. Laura stood. The state also wants the court aware. This infant is the presumptive beneficiary of Daniel Hollis's estate, per recent will revision. We are investigating potential foul play in Mr. Hollis's death and potential attempted homicide against the infant. The mother of record, Rachel Pierce, is a person of interest. The judge's gaze flicked to me. Mrs. Hollis, you're 63. Infant care is demanding. Are you prepared for the strain? I've been preparing my whole life, I said. I just didn't know what for. A corner of her mouth moved. Anyone else, I'd have called it almost a smile. Temporary placement granted, she said, gavel soft but final. Supervised home visits by CPS weekly. Medical follow-up per NICU directive. Review in 6 weeks. The words didn't sound like trumpets, but inside me, something did. Not victory. Not yet. But a kind of retreating of the water, the way shorelines appear after flood. Ilar. Back in the NICU, Caroline strapped Noah into a car seat, her hands as reverent as if she were settling a saint into a reliquary. Call for anything, she said. You're not alone in this. I don't plan to be, I said, and meant it. We stepped out into the thin sun, the hospital's glass face throwing us back at ourselves. An old woman carrying a new life. Both of us too breakable for a world that keeps proving it can't be trusted. Both of us stubborn enough to try anyway. At home, I set him in the crib. He blinked at the paper stars like he recognized a map only he could read. Welcome to Juniper, I told him. We have storms here and old ghosts and a lake that tries to keep secrets. But we also have porches at sunset and neighbors who bring casseroles when life breaks, and a Nana who will fight like a sinner and pray like a saint, if that's what it takes. He sneezed a tiny startled explosion, and I laughed for the first time in months, the sound unfamiliar and not unwelcome. The phone rang. Laura, we pulled partial prints off the suitcase, she said. We also located the rental cabin. We found twine that matches the ligature on the umbilical cord. And we found a mechanic willing to talk. Name's Eddie Cooper. Will he give you Rachel? He'll give us enough to get to her, Laura said. Get some sleep, Maggie. We start moving fast now. I looked at the crib, at Noah's fist pressed against his cheek, at the paper stars turning slowly in the air I'd made safe for him. I'll sleep when you find her, I said. You and me both, Laura answered, and the line clicked quiet. Outside, the lake lay flat and innocent, the way liars rest when nobody's watching. Inside, a baby breathed, steady, slow. I sat down in the rocker and tried to memorize the sound, the rhythm, the proof that something in this story had already chosen life. The storm had broken. The water was receding. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a woman who thought she could drown a future was running out of places to hide. And in the room that used to be Daniel's, the boy he never got to meet slept under paper stars, and I kept my vow the only way vows are kept, one waking hour at a time. It started with a phone call, the kind that doesn't belong to daylight. I was in the kitchen, half asleep at the table, when the phone rang at 1:37 a.m. The sound cut through the stillness like a blade. For a moment I thought it was one of those ghost calls, telemarketers or wrong numbers, but something in my chest said no. I answered. A woman's voice, low and sharp as glass. "Hello, Mother Hollis." I froze. "Rachel." She laughed, soft and poisonous. "Still up this late, or are you waiting for my baby to cry? You lost the right to call him yours the moment you threw him into that lake." "Oh, please," she said. "Spare me the sermon. You think I don't know what you're doing? Running to cops, pretending to be some saintly grandma while they hand you my son? Don't play pure with me, Margaret." My voice came out steadier than my heart. "You murdered Daniel. You tried to kill that baby. Whatever's left of you belongs in prison." But Rachel's breath hissed through the line. "You talk too much. Maybe you'd like to see what happens when people talk too much." Then came a sound in the background, metal clanging, the splash of water, like someone walking near a dock. "Where are you, Rachel?" "Closer than you think," she whispered. "If you want to keep that baby breathing, you'll meet me. Boathouse on Juniper. Midnight tomorrow. Bring $50,000. And don't bring the cops. Or the next time you see me, you'll be standing over another grave." The line went dead. At sunrise, I called Detective Laura Bennett. "She made contact," I said. Laura's tone turned cold. "Details. She wants money, midnight, at the old boathouse." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Good. We'll give her exactly what she wants." That afternoon, Laura came to the house with a small team. 2 unmarked cars, a tactical van, and enough quiet confidence to convince me that the tide had finally turned. "We'll wire you," she said, showing me the tiny microphone clipped inside a pendant. "Keep her talking as long as possible. We'll move in when she implicates herself." I swallowed hard. "And if she doesn't come alone?" "She will," Laura said. "Predators like control. They don't share their stage." She handed me a duffel bag filled with decoy bills. "Weight's the same," she explained. "That looks real unless she counts every dollar." I stared at it, remembering the suitcase that had changed everything. "One bag took life away," I said quietly. "Let's see if another can bring justice." Laura looked at me with something between admiration and warning. "Don't be a hero, Maggie. Just keep her talking." The night came cold and windless. The moon hung low over Juniper Lake, its reflection trembling like a heartbeat across the black water. I parked my truck near the tree line, engine off. The duffel lay on the seat beside me. Every sound, the creak of pine, the sigh of water against wood, felt amplified, too loud for a world that should have been asleep. The boathouse loomed at the end of the dock, its roof sagging like a wounded animal. A lantern glowed faintly inside. I stepped out, my boots crunching gravel. The air carried that wet, metallic scent I'd never forgotten, the smell of the night Daniel died. Inside, shadows stretched long and crooked. "Rachel," I called. She stepped out from behind a post, wearing a dark coat, hair disheveled, eyes fever-bright. The gun in her hand gleamed faintly under the lantern light. "Well," she said, smirking, "you actually came. I thought maybe you'd send your little police friends instead." "I came alone," I lied. The mic in my pendant blinked silently. "Where's the baby?" "In good hands," she said, mocking. "Better than he'd be with you, rocking him to death with guilt." I placed the duffel on the table between us. 50,000, just like you asked." She tilted her head, inspecting me. "You always were obedient. Guess Daniel got that from you." My blood turned to ice. "You killed him." Rachel laughed. "He killed himself the moment he tried to take my future away. You know what he did? He changed his will. Every cent to that unborn brat. You think I was going to let that happen? You think I'd let my life become diapers and debt?" Her voice rose, cracked. "He begged me to keep it. Said we'd be a family. A family." He was drowning in his own sentimentality. "You poisoned him," I said. She shook her head. "Oh, I didn't have to. A little brake line tampering one rainy night, and nature did the rest." There it was, the confession. Raw, real, recorded. I kept my voice calm. "And the baby?" She rolled her eyes. "You think I planned that part? I didn't even know I was pregnant until after he died. I thought, fine, I'll have it, collect sympathy, maybe even sell the story. But when I looked at that thing screaming, looking like him, I couldn't do it, Maggie. I couldn't raise a ghost." "So you stuffed him into a suitcase and threw him in the lake." She smiled, a small, terrifying smile. "And you dove right in, always the martyr." My fingers curled. You murdered your husband, tried to drown your child, and now you want money. What's left of your soul, Rachel? You think I care about souls? She hissed. I care about survival. She stepped closer, the gun steady now. You're going to walk out with me. We'll drive to the highway, you'll give me the real money, and maybe I'll let you live long enough to say goodbye to your precious grandson. I didn't move. Daniel loved you, I said softly, even when he knew what you were. Love is weakness, she spat. The words echoed off the water, and then from outside came the faint crunch of gravel. Her head whipped toward the door. What was that? Wind, I said. You always hated silence. Her eyes narrowed. You're lying. Before I could breathe, she fired, one deafening shot. The bullet tore through my shoulder, spinning me backward. Pain exploded down my arm. I hit the floor, clutching at the warmth flooding my sleeve. Rachel cursed, grabbed the duffel, and turned for the door. That's when the night erupted in light and sound. Police! Drop the weapon! She spun, wild-eyed, firing once more. Glass shattered, echoes screamed. Red and blue lights splashed across the boathouse walls. Rachel stumbled, dropped the gun, tried to run, but Laura Bennett was faster. She tackled her to the ground, knee pressed against her back, cuffs snapping shut with the finality of justice. It's over, Laura said, breathing hard. You're done, Pierce. Rachel's voice broke into a feral laugh. You think this ends it? He's still dead. You can't change that. Laura didn't answer. She just nodded to the paramedics rushing toward me. I was sitting up by then, dizzy, bleeding, but alive. Rachel's laughter echoed faintly as they dragged her out, her wrists glinting under the lights. Hours later, the boathouse was quiet again, crime scene tape fluttering like ribbons in the dawn breeze. The lake, calm as glass, reflected the first wash of pale pink morning. Laura crouched beside me on the dock, her jacket draped over my shoulders. You'll be fine, she said. Through and through, missed the artery. I winced but smiled. You got her. She nodded. Eddie Cooper flipped. His testimony matches her confession. We've got recordings, fingerprints, the gun. It's airtight. I looked out at the water. That lake took my son, but tonight it gave him peace. Laura's voice softened. It gave you justice, Maggie. Justice, I repeated, tasting the word like salt. Feels heavier than I thought. She stood. Go home. Hold your grandson. Let the rest of us clean up the mess. The drive home felt unreal. The world still half in shadows. When I stepped inside the house, the quiet was different. No longer haunted, just waiting. Noah stirred in his crib as if he sensed the change. His eyes fluttered open, gray like Daniel's. I knelt beside him, my shoulder throbbing, my heart raw and whole in the same breath. It's over, I whispered. She can't hurt you anymore. Outside, the lake gleamed silver under the new light, its surface still, pretending it had never held secrets. I rocked him slowly, his small hand clutching the collar of my shirt. You know, I murmured, your father once said every building needs a foundation strong enough to stand through storms. He built his with love. She tried to tear it down. But look at us, Noah. We're still standing. He sighed, drifting back into sleep, and I watched the dawn push through the mist. Somewhere across town, Rachel Pierce sat in a holding cell, her hands empty, her voice recorded, her empire of lies collapsing one truth at a time. And by the lake, in a house that had known too much loss, a grandmother held the proof that love could outlast evil. For the first time in a long while, the world felt quiet in a way that didn't hurt. The courtroom was colder than any winter I'd known. It had been 4 months since that night at the boathouse. My shoulder healed into a scar shaped like a question mark, as if my own body still wanted answers. But there weren't any left to find, only the slow machinery of justice turning its heavy gears. Rachel Pierce sat at the defense table, her hair cut blunt, her wrists cuffed. She didn't look at me. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she knew that if she did, she'd see what she'd made, not just grief, but something sharper, something that had outlasted her hate. Detective Laura Bennett sat a few rows behind the prosecutor, flipping through evidence photos without emotion. She'd told me once that in her line of work, detachment was survival. Still, I saw the flicker in her jaw when they brought out the suitcase, tagged and sealed as Exhibit A. When the recording played, Rachel's voice hissing through the speakers, confessing to the brake line, the suitcase, the money, The room fell into the kind of silence that makes you hear your own pulse. Somewhere in the back, a woman gasped. The rest just stared. The judge, Evelyn Carter, spoke last. Rachel Pierce, the court finds you guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, attempted infanticide, fraud, and obstruction of justice. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Rachel didn't flinch. She just smiled. That small, bitter smile of someone who thinks the world cheated her first. Then she turned her head slightly, just enough for our eyes to meet. For a second, I saw the ghost of the girl Daniel once loved, scared, furious, young, and then she was gone, swallowed by the bailiffs and the law. After the verdict, Laura walked me outside. The Georgia sun was brutal, hot enough to burn away the damp in the air. "It's done," she said simply. "No," I said. "It's over. That's not the same thing." She nodded. She always understood the difference. "You did good, Maggie." I did what I had to. We stood in silence a while. A cicada buzzed somewhere in the oak trees. The courthouse steps gleamed white and merciless. "Take care of that boy," she said. "I intend to," I replied. "And you, take care of yourself. You've been chasing ghosts long enough." Laura smiled faintly. "Maybe this one can finally rest." The legal process of permanent adoption took almost 6 months. Background checks, psychological updates, home visits, every paper cut of bureaucracy that stood between me and the only family I had left. But every time Angela Park came by with her clipboard, she'd smile a little more. "You're doing it, Mrs. Hollis," she said one afternoon as Noah crawled across the living room, chasing sunlight on the floorboards. "He's thriving, you both are." "I had help," I said, nodding toward the shelf where Daniel's photo sat beside a tiny framed drawing Noah had made, a shaky stick figure and a circle labeled Nana. The adoption hearing was mercifully short. Judge Carter presided again, her robe crisp, her voice soft. "Mrs. Hollis," she said, "this court formally recognizes your petition for adoption. As of this date, Noah Daniel Hollis is legally and permanently your son." The gavel struck, and the sound cracked something open inside me that I hadn't realized was still closed. I looked at Noah, 2 years old now, restless in his tiny suit, and whispered, "We did it, sweetheart. We're home." 5 years later. The lake looks different now. They rebuilt the boathouse last spring. New beams, fresh paint, stronger foundations. I still don't go inside. But sometimes when the wind is still, I sit on the porch and watch the water, silver in the late light, and I almost forgive it. Noah is 5. He has Daniel's eyes and my stubborn chin. Every morning he runs down the yard shouting, "Nana, watch this," before launching himself into the world like gravity was a suggestion. He brings me rocks that he swears are treasure, drawings of spaceships that look suspiciously like fishing boats, and 1,000 questions I never have perfect answers for. He calls me Mom now, not because I asked him to, but because one day, he just did. And when he says it, something inside me believes in tomorrow again. Sometimes, Laura visits with her wife and their dog, bringing fresh peaches and crime stories she refuses to tell on duty. Angela stops by too, now with a toddler of her own. And Pastor Samuel still preaches the same way, slow, kind, certain that grace is something you do, not just something you say. The house has changed, but it's alive. The old photos remain. Daniel on graduation day, his arm around a woman I no longer see but still remember. I don't hide them. He loved her once, and that part of the story belongs to him, not her crimes. I've learned that forgiveness isn't letting someone off the hook. It's letting yourself stop bleeding from the same wound. At sunset, Noah and I walk to the water's edge. He carries a paper boat we made together. Blue construction paper, crooked but proud. He sets it on the surface, watching it drift. "What if it sinks?" he asks. "Then we make another one," I tell him. "That's how life works." He nods, thinking hard the way children do, and then, "Daddy would like that, huh?" "He would," I whisper. We stand there, hand in hand, watching the paper boat sail toward the horizon until it's just a dot on the silver water. The air smells like pine and rain. The world feels wide again. Behind us the porch light flicks on, a small beacon against the coming night. And for the first time in years, I realize something simple and holy. The lake doesn't scare me anymore. It gave me back what it took. Not the same, never the same, but enough. Enough to live, enough to love again, enough to build a foundation that no storm can wash away.